first Europeans to set eyes on New Mexico were Spanish conquistadors coming north out of Old Mexico looking for the fabled 7 cities of gold. From the first contact that Europeans had with New Mexico right up to the present day, the search for wealth, for gold, for silver, for copper, and for other valuable metals from the ground has driven the economy and the exploration and the development of New Mexico. Those first conquistadors came here looking for money, the gold that would finance the Spanish Empire, which was the first empire with a worldwide scope, the first empire of which it could be said the sun never sets. So when the conquistadors came here, it was gold fever that drove them. It drove them north, and it drove them to seek gold wherever they could find it.
Fill her up, Pop. Or fill her up, Pip. Or fill her up. Put some gas in it. What's the hurry, young feller? I'm going out to gig for gold. Or don't for gig. Or gill for oh, fiddly-dee. I'm going out to dig for gold. Gold? Don't make me laugh. Why, there ain't no more gold in them hills than there is in a hound dog's tooth. Listen, son, I've dug for gold in every corner of the world. Why, I remember back in 1849.
From the time that New Mexico became an American territory after the Mexican War, back in 1848, people have been looking for gold and for silver in Sierra County and throughout New Mexico. To this day, there are people who believe that there are caches of Spanish gold somewhere in the Caballo Mountains or in the Gila Range or in the Sacramento Mountains or somewhere here in southwestern New Mexico, and people still pan for gold, look for gold, try to find treasure, and lay out their mineral claims to get some gold for themselves. Back in the 1880s, a notice was posted at the Nut Railroad station that pretty much summed up the attitude toward the gold rush here in New Mexico. "Ho for the gold and silver mines of New Mexico," it read. "Fortune hunters, capitalists, poor men, sickly folks, all whose hearts are bowed down, and ye who would live long, be rich, healthy, and happy, come to our sunny clime and see for yourselves."
Shucks. Oh, shucks.
Found gold in Virginia City. Gold?
While it was nothing compared to the gold rush to California in the 1850s, the rush to New Mexico's newly discovered gold fields did attract people and investments from all over the country. People who couldn't drop everything and head for the mines invested in companies that claimed they would make their shareholders rich. As gold mining evolved, the economic climate also changed drastically, so that gold could be retrieved profitably from gold fields only by medium to large groups of workers, either in partnerships or working as employees. By the end of the 19th century, it was the owners of the gold mining companies who made the money. Scholars confirm that merchants made far more money than miners during a gold rush. On average, half the gold seekers made a modest profit, after all their expenses were taken into account, Most, however, especially those who arrived later, made little money or wound up losing money. Similarly, many unlucky merchants set up in settlements that disappeared or were wiped out in one of the calamitous fires that swept the gold mining boom towns that were springing up. Silver and gold have been found in 163 different mining districts and other geographic locations in the state of New Mexico. More than 3.2 million ounces of gold and 117 million ounces of silver have been produced in New Mexico since it became part of the U.S. in 1848. Production from most districts has been small. However, 14 of the districts have produced more than 3 million ounces of silver. Together they account for approximately 80% of the total silver production in New Mexico. 10 districts have produced more than 150,000 ounces of gold, and together they account for approximately 96% of the total gold production in New Mexico. Silver and gold are found in 14 distinct types of deposits that range in age from the Proterozoic through the Holocene. The story of Lake Valley, New Mexico is a typical tale of the boom and bust that came and went in the many towns of Sierra County and throughout the Mountain West. From the humble present conditions of Lake Valley, one would hardly imagine that it had such a colorful past. But prior to the turn of the 20th century, Lake Valley was a booming mining town. Silver was first found in Lake Valley in 1878. But it wasn't until 1882 that the big discovery was made. That was the year that the Bridal Chamber Mine was discovered. Silver ore was found just 40 feet from the surface. A single piece of silver from the Bridal Chamber Mine was displayed at the World Exposition held in Denver in 1882. That piece of silver was valued at $7,000. And this was at a time when silver was selling for about $1 an ounce. The Lake Valley mines were controlled by the Sierra Grande Mining Company, established by financier Whitaker Wright. Naive Eastern investors flocked to invest their money in the western silver and gold mines. In fact, one of the more famous stockholders in the Sierra Grande Mining Company was Walt Whitman, the poet, who owned 200 shares. Whitaker Wright went on to speculative ventures all over the globe. His endeavors were always tainted by accusations that he habitually misled his investors. He finally created a worldwide sensation by swallowing cyanide in a London courtroom to avoid going to prison for fraud. In 1884, the railroad was extended to Lake Valley. It was then a typical mining town, with plenty of saloons open around the clock. The town had a reputation for lawlessness, as did most of the other western mining towns. A gunfighter named Jim Courtwright, also known as Long Hair Jim, was hired as town marshal in 1882. And the story says that he quickly brought things to order. Lake Valley was a sister city to Hillsboro and Kingston, two other mining towns which were just a few miles to the north. The three towns were linked by the Lake Valley, Hillsboro, and Kingston stage and express line. The stagecoach ran daily from the railhead at Lake Valley to the mining camps to the north. It was run by one Sadie Orchard, who is also reportedly was the proprietor of the Kingston brothel. All this prosperity and activity in Lake Valley took a downturn in 1893 when silver was devalued. Hillsboro was somewhat spared the fate of Kingston, Chloride, and Lake Valley in that its economy was based more on gold than silver. But to make matters worse for Lake Valley, most of Main Street burned to the ground in 1895. A few settlers who had put down roots in Lake Valley stayed on into the 20th century, but the others drifted away to try and make their fortunes elsewhere. While there have been brief periods of revival for Lake Valley, during the 20s and again during World War II, when the area was mined for manganese ore, it is nothing more than a ghost town today. The little adobe chapel was used for church services as recently as the 1970s, and the school building, restored to the way it was in its heyday, is also open to the public. The producers want to thank the Bureau of Land Management for this brief historical look at Lake Valley, and to invite visitors to visit the ghost town, which is open to the public year-round. So what was it that caused Sierra County to change from being a boom county littered with brand new communities like Robinson and Grafton, Gold Dust and Pittsburgh, to a community that has a good collection of ghost towns? What made the boom towns into ghost towns? To understand exactly what was going on, you need to understand that there were two political forces at work in America. One was called the Free Silver Movement, and the other was called the Sound Money Movement. To understand what is meant by free coinage of silver, you need to understand that the way mints operated in the days of the gold standard, anyone who possessed uncoined gold, such as prospectors, could take it to a United States mint and trade it for its equivalent in gold coins. Free silver advocates wanted the mints to accept silver on the same principle, so that anyone would be able to deposit silver bullion at a mint and in return receive nearly its weight in silver dollars and other currency. Silver miners wished to see unlimited production of silver dollars, but in 1873, Congress refused to include the silver dollar in its list of authorized coins. This was called the Crime of 1873. A protest movement resulted, and 5 years later, the silver dollar became legal tender. Now, for the most part, the Republican Party opposed free silver, arguing that the best road to national prosperity was what it called sound money, a policy of attempting to maintain or increase the dollar's value, as this rewarded those who had accumulated wealth. Westerners, populists, miners, and farmers preferred free silver because this meant that there would be always more money going into circulation, making it easier to pay off debts. The political battle waged back and forth. The Silver Purchase Act of 1890 required the U.S. government to buy millions of ounces of silver, but then after the Panic of 1893, Grover Cleveland engineered the repeal of the act. Eastern bankers were then blamed for the depressed silver market, and the Democratic Party adopted the demand for unlimited free silver in its presidential campaign for 1896. But following the 1900 election, a Republican Congress passed the Gold Standard Act, which made gold the sole standard of currency, and the effect was devastating on the silver mining towns of Sierra County.
They found gold at Sutter's Mill. Gold? 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 Whoopee!
Okay, so what you're saying, this is Sunny Hale, and we are on a we're out on a field trip looking at the the land and the area around Hillsboro. Now, Sonny, tell us about in the 1930s how people
Well, they come out
etched it.
and they screen this dirt, and then they take the screen dirt, then they take it somewhere where there was water, and probably it was down there at the Cold Springs where they did that.
And then the white, then there would be another, and then they would bring the wet up here. Is that what they would do?
What's that?
They would bring the wet dirt up here and then create
No,
these.
this is all dry dirt. They take it off someplace else, and then they'd pan it.
And pan it. But this is how they would take out the big rocks.
Yeah.
Then they would sift
Sift it, basically.
it then here,
Yeah.
and then they would take that to the water.
Yeah. See, here's some more. Here's some more right here. See?
Yeah.
And here's some more right here.
So if anybody is ever out and they are taking a hike and they're seeing these different types or piles of rocks that look like they've been graded, it was part of the process of leaching out the larger rocks and then making the bedrock available so then they could find the gold.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sonny.
Well, they